For decades, the global auto industry had a simple rule. Germany engineered it, Japan perfected it, America marketed it, and everyone else bought it. That rule is now dead. And the country that killed it? China. But here is where it gets interesting. China is not just building cheaper cars. They are not just copying old technology. They have leapfrogged the West in batteries, software, and manufacturing speed. And now, that technology has arrived on Canadian soil. Quietly, legally, and with almost no warning. You need to understand what just happened. In the last 18 months alone, Chinese automakers have exported over 5 million electric vehicles globally. That is more than Tesla, Ford, and General Motors combined in the same period. But here is the number that should terrify Detroit. Nearly 200,000 of those vehicles have entered North America through a back door you have never heard of. And Canada is that door. Let me explain how this works. The United States slapped a 100% tariff on Chinese EVs. Europe followed with their own restrictions. So China did what China always does. They found a loophole. They started shipping cars to Mexico, then to Canada. And from there, those vehicles are driving straight into American driveways through a legal gray zone that no one is talking about. Canadian dealerships in British Columbia and Ontario are now quietly stocking brands you have probably never seen. BYD, Xpeng, Niu, Zeekr. These are not cheap golf carts. These are luxury vehicles with 800-volt architectures, solid-state batteries, and autonomous driving systems that work in blizzards. Meanwhile, the West is panicking, but not for the reason you think. It is not just about jobs or trade deficits. It is about timing. A typical Western automaker takes 5 to 7 years to develop a new vehicle platform. China does it in 18 months. Western battery factories are still under construction. China already has 200 gigafactories running at full capacity. And while German engineers are arguing about software updates, Chinese cars are already receiving over-the-air improvements every 2 weeks. The gap is not closing. It is accelerating. But here is the truth that nobody wants to admit. Chinese technology is not just cheaper. In many ways, it is genuinely better. Their blade batteries do not catch fire. Their LiDAR systems see further than Tesla's cameras. Their infotainment screens respond faster than a new iPhone. And Canadian consumers are starting to notice. Drive through any major city from Vancouver to Halifax, and you will see Chinese EVs parked next to Ford F-150s. The transformation has already begun. You just have not been paying attention. So here is the question that keeps auto executives awake at night. If China can build a better car, cheaper and faster, and deliver it to Canadian driveways without paying a single tariff, what exactly is stopping them from taking over the entire North American market? The answer might surprise you, because it is not technology. It is not money, and it is certainly not quality. What happens next will determine the future of every car company on this continent. And it starts with a single shipment arriving at the port of Vancouver next week. Let me show you exactly what Chinese technology looks like under the hood. Because most people still imagine cheap plastic interiors and dangerous batteries. That is old news. Today's Chinese EVs are weapons. And they are armed with 3 specific technologies that the West cannot match. Number 1. The battery. Western automakers are still fighting over lithium iron phosphate versus nickel manganese cobalt. China already moved on. BYD's new blade battery does something no Western battery can do. It survives a nail penetration test without exploding. You can literally drive a nail through a fully charged cell, and it will just sit there smoking politely instead of turning into a fireball. Tesla tried to copy this design. They could not. The manufacturing tolerances required are too precise for their existing lines. Meanwhile, every new Chinese EV comes standard with this technology while Western cars still issue recalls for thermal runaway. But the battery is just the beginning. Number 2 is charging speed. A Porsche Taycan takes about 22 minutes to go from 10 to 80% on a good day. A Chinese Zeekr 001 with their new gold battery does the same in 11.5 minutes. That is not a typo. 11 minutes. You cannot even finish a coffee. And here is the killer detail. That charging speed works in Canadian winter conditions. Chinese engineers tested their systems in Heilongjiang province where temperatures drop to -40 degrees Celsius. Your iPhone dies in that cold. Their cars lose only 12% range. Western EVs lose 30% or more. So when a Chinese EV owner in Edmonton says their car works fine in January, they are not exaggerating. They are telling the truth. Number 3 is the one that really scares Silicon Valley. Autonomous driving. Everyone knows about Tesla's full self-driving. Everyone knows it still crashes into fire trucks. China's approach is different. Instead of relying only on cameras like Tesla, Chinese systems use 3 overlapping technologies: cameras, radar, and LiDAR. That laser-based system gives them something Tesla does not have: redundancy. When a camera gets blinded by snow or direct sunlight, the LiDAR keeps working. When radar gets confused by a metal bridge, the cameras take over. Huawei's latest system has driven over 10 million autonomous kilometers in real-world traffic. Not on a test track. On actual highways. In rain. In fog. In construction zones. And their accident rate? Lower than human drivers by a factor of 4. But here is where the West made a fatal mistake. They assumed Chinese technology was only for the domestic market. They assumed intellectual property laws would protect them. They assumed wrong. Because Chinese automakers are not just selling cars anymore. They are licensing their platforms. A German luxury brand just signed a deal to use a Chinese battery architecture. A Japanese giant is buying Chinese autonomous driving software. The technology that started in Shenzhen is now powering vehicles from Stuttgart to Tokyo. And Canada? Canada is the testing ground. Our cold weather, our long distances, our diverse road conditions. Chinese engineers are using Canadian highways to prove their systems work anywhere. And so far, they are winning. So how is the West responding to this invasion? Badly. Really badly. Let me walk you through the chaos because it tells you everything about why China is winning. First, the United States tried tariffs. 100% on Chinese EVs. That sounds aggressive until you realize what it actually means. A $30,000 Chinese car becomes $60,000 overnight. Great for protecting American jobs. Terrible for American consumers who now cannot afford an EV at all. But here is the embarrassing part. The tariffs do not actually stop Chinese cars. They just redirect them. Those same vehicles now go to Mexico, then to Canada, then across the border through a legal loophole called de minimis exemptions. Goods valued under $800 enter the U.S. without tariffs. So Chinese automakers started shipping cars in pieces. A door here, a battery there, a motor somewhere else. Then reassembled in a warehouse near Buffalo. Customs officials are still trying to figure out how to stop this. They cannot. Europe tried a different approach. Regulation. They demanded that Chinese companies share their battery technology as the price of market access. China agreed. Then they sent last year's technology. The stuff they already replaced. European automakers celebrated getting access to Chinese blade batteries. What they did not know was that China had already moved on to solid-state cells with twice the energy density. Europe got the leftovers. China kept the future. Now let me tell you what is actually happening in Canada right now. Because this is where the story gets real. In Surrey, British Columbia, there is a dealership that does not even have a sign in English. They sell Chinese EVs exclusively. And they are selling 200 units per month. Mostly to customers who drove 3 hours from Washington state because American dealers could not get them. The RCMP has no jurisdiction over a private sale. Canada Border Services says if the car is registered in Canada, it is legal. The United States cannot touch it. In Ontario, something even stranger is happening. Chinese companies are buying up small Canadian auto parts suppliers. Not the big ones you have heard of. The tiny shops that make wiring harnesses and plastic trim pieces. These are companies that Western automakers ignored. Now they are owned by Chinese holding companies. And they are being retooled to produce Chinese-branded components that magically become made in Canada. You see where this is going. If a car has enough Canadian content, it qualifies for North American free trade benefits. Chinese engineers figured this out 3 years ago. Western trade negotiators are still reading the fine print. The result is a two-tier market that nobody predicted. On one side, you have legacy automakers selling expensive EVs with old technology. On the other side, you have Chinese brands offering superior range, faster charging, lower prices, and better software. And Canadian consumers are voting with their wallets. Surveys show that 62% of Canadian car buyers would consider a Chinese EV if it saves them $10,000. That number was 15% just 2 years ago. The stigma is gone. The technology has proven itself. And the only thing standing between China and total market dominance is politics. But politics has a funny way of changing when voters demand cheaper cars. Let me tell you what happens next. Because the next 18 months will decide the future of the North American auto industry. And most people have no idea what is coming. Prediction 1. By the end of this year, a major Chinese automaker will announce a Canadian assembly plant. Not a distribution center. Not a warehouse. A real factory with thousands of workers. The location will be somewhere in Ontario or Quebec where government incentives are largest. And here is the twist. That factory will not produce cars for export. It will produce cars specifically for the Canadian market. Modified for our weather, our roads, our charging standards. This is not speculation. Land has already been purchased near Kitchener. Building permits have been filed under a shell company. The announcement is coming. Mark my words. Prediction 2. Within 12 months, at least one Western automaker will file for bankruptcy protection specifically because of Chinese competition. Not a small brand, a major one. Think of the names that have struggled for a decade. The company that cannot decide between hybrids and EVs. The brand that keeps delaying their electric truck. Chinese competition will be the final nail in their coffin. And when that happens, politicians will scream about unfair trade. They will demand bailouts. They will blame everyone except themselves. But the truth is simple. They lost because they stopped innovating. They lost because they assumed customers would keep buying inferior products out of loyalty. Customers do not work that way anymore. Prediction 3. And this is the most important one. The Canadian government will be forced to choose between two impossible options. Option 1. Keep borders open to Chinese EVs, protect consumer choice, and watch domestic manufacturing collapse. Option 2. Impose tariffs, save Canadian jobs, and face a consumer revolt when car prices jump $15,000 overnight. There is no good answer. There is only the least bad answer. And whichever way they decide, someone is going to be furious. So where does that leave you? Right in the middle of the most disruptive change in automotive history. The cars your children drive will not come from Detroit or Stuttgart. They will come from Shenzhen and Shanghai. And that is not a bad thing. Competition forces everyone to improve. Western automakers are already scrambling to copy Chinese battery tech. German engineers are learning Mandarin so they can work with Chinese suppliers. The old order is dying. The new order is being written right now. And you get to watch it happen. If you want to stay ahead of this revolution, you need to know what is coming next. In our next video, I am going to show you the one Chinese technology that Western automakers are terrified to talk about. Solid-state batteries. They will double your range. They will charge in 5 minutes. And they will make every EV on the road today obsolete. China is already mass-producing them. The West is still 5 years away. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel. And get ready for part 2. Because the war for your driveway has only just begun.